Hello again, everyone. It's Mr. Most Days Off, back again for another episode of the Best Darn Diddly Review Show. This week we have Bart versus Thanksgiving and Bart the Daredevil, so two Bart-centric episodes to talk about. And I've got two people to introduce to talk about them with you. First off, your co-host with the most, Richie the WizKid. How are you today, Rich?
I'm doing okay after that second episode. The first one was a little meh, but as usual, we will get into that. I'll go ahead and throw it back to you since we have a special guest today. But again, I'll throw it back to you, the man, the myth, the Mr. Teeny. It is Mr. Most Days Off.
Hey, I don't know what Emily told you, but that's not true. All right, we also do have a very special guest today, a good friend of mine and a Simpsons fanatic, Aaron. Welcome to the show.
Hello. I'm glad to be here.
We're glad to have you, sir. We usually start when we have new guests, man. Why don't you go ahead and tell everybody a little bit about yourself and your connection with The Simpsons?
Okay, so growing up, I actually remember watching some of the Simpsons shorts on the Tracy Ullman show.
Old school.
Oh, yeah, and it's rough. If you ever go back and watch them, it's some crazy animation. But after that, I did not actually really get into them big time until I was actually older. I never had TV in my room, but I got a computer my senior year of high school and the internet, of course, and then you had the days of Napster and
So
all
when
this,
you got done with pornography, you found a little bit of time for The Simpsons.
Basically, you could download all these BitTorrents, and I started just downloading seasons and seasons of The Simpsons. So that's what I would watch at night, and going to bed, I would just throw on 2 or 3 episodes, let them play, and I'd pass out somewhere in the middle of it until I eventually had them all. And then, of course, they started releasing them on DVD, so started collecting them there.
That's really cool, man. I don't honestly know that I've ever met anyone else that was kind of a late life Simpsons fan like that. Like most of the people we talk to grew up with the show, so your perspective of being introduced to it young but not really getting to experience it, I think that'll be interesting.
Right. I did watch, a handful of episodes here and there, but and it may have been, I don't think my parents were ever averse to me watching it or anything, but I just was never good about, hey, this time a certain show comes on and I'm going to sit and watch it. Never happened for me, for really any show, maybe other than like Saved by the Bell.
Good for you for having a life and shit, man. That's really unique.
My dad was always like, it's 6:30, The Simpsons are on, let's get in front of the TV. But I kind of lucked out on my parents. They actually enjoyed The Simpsons.
So, something interesting about this first episode, we're going to start with Bart vs. Thanksgiving, which aired on November 22nd, 1990. And interestingly enough, this is actually on Thanksgiving Day, and this was a first for The Simpsons because they had previously been on Sunday nights, and for season 2, they switched over to Thursdays. So this gave them their very first Thanksgiving special. We started with a somewhat raunchy chalkboard gag of "I will not do that thing with my tongue." I think that's technically referring to the funny faces Bart makes, but let's be real here. That sounds kinky.
Those naughty producers and writers.
We also get a great couch gag where Grandpa Simpson is sleeping on the couch and gets startled by the Simpsons family running in and does his classic old man crotchety kind of startled screaming. And we get another first appearance on the show. We've had her mentioned in the past, but for the first time we are introduced in person to Marge's mother, Jackie Bouvier.
Yeah, the thing that threw me off about her is that, I always try to catch stuff like this. When she enters the home, she enters through the back door.
Yeah, you are the king of incontinuity or inconsistencies. So this episode starts out with the Simpsons family getting ready for Thanksgiving in all of their various ways. That basically means Marge is doing everything, Homer's watching football, and the kids are arguing over glue. Lisa proves pretty quickly that Bart doesn't really care about the glue and just wants to fight because by the time she is able to prove this to Homer, all she has to do is give the glue to Bart, and he immediately is like, "Hey man, I don't want your stupid glue."
Isn't that so true? I don't have any brothers or sisters, but to me, everyone I know that has a brother or sister, that's typically how their fights would go when I was over at their houses.
I'm also an only child, so I would say the same. I know I got into squabbles with my friends about this, but I always saw it more in siblings. Aaron, you have siblings? Was this the case for you in your home?
Yeah, I am a middle child. And the other 2 are sisters, and it's most definitely a sibling thing, and of course as a parent too. Man, kids do that all the time. It's absolutely insane. It's the stupidest thing, but they do it nonstop.
Oh yeah, that's right. Aaron's got two fairly young children, so I imagine you are getting to the point where they're actually getting old enough where they can actually fight now. So it's a little bit more worrisome because when they're toddlers, you just kind of let them go at it because I mean toddler fighting is hilarious. But when they get old enough that they can actually inflict pain, you got to start parenting, dude. That gets real fast.
Oh, absolutely.
So did all the terrible things you did as a child come back to haunt you now?
Yeah, definitely. The worst of it is when I say something, and as soon as I'm done saying it, I'm like, I sound just like my dad. And it's like the moment I never thought would happen, and it's like it's totally coming to true. So
it happens to everyone eventually, apparently. So we get another scene right after this that would be a great scene on its own, but it's made even better because of the historical significance of this date. We get Homer and Bart discussing the idea that they should use more current cartoon characters in the floats of the Thanksgiving Day parades. They had like Bullwinkle and Rocky, I believe, and Bart makes the comment, it wouldn't hurt them to use cartoons made in the last 50 years. And Homer starts to talk about how that would make the entire thing a farce if they just made every cartoon character a balloon. Well, it turns out in real life, in the real world, on that very day, we got the debut of Bart Simpson's float in the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade.
In the actual one?
In the actual world, yeah, in real life, Bart Simpson's float debuted on the same day as this episode.
That's funny, too. It plays into the joke since on the actual TV screen of The Simpsons, you see Bart's float fly by at that exact moment, too.
Fantastic, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like that's the type of stuff that they just, I don't know if they had that knowledge. They had to have had that knowledge in advance, just knowing that they were going to be airing on Thursday. And I imagine, building a balloon, they can't just start in like October. I mean, that's a pretty big process. So I imagine they knew, but man, that's such great writing.
It also shows that the Simpsons are already making an impact just on cultural society if they're already having a character in the actual Thanksgiving Day parade.
Absolutely. Bart is one of the most popular characters in pop culture at this time. I mean, he is absolutely blown up. As we discussed a couple episodes ago with Matthew Klickstein, there was the Bart t-shirts that everybody wore at school and some got in trouble for even. And Bart was really becoming an icon. And I think part of that was because of the rebellious nature of the 90s. People were starting to talk about The Simpsons being a naughty show, as we talked about prior, and that made 90s kids want to watch it even more.
Makes sense.
So, we get a great scene where Bart helps, so to speak, Marge prepare Thanksgiving dinner, but I bet Aaron can account for this too. Absolutely just makes Marge's life so much harder because every single task that Marge would probably take about 12 seconds to do takes about 30 seconds of explaining just to help Bart open a freaking can of cranberry sauce, I think it was.
Yeah, I watched that and I laughed. I haven't watched some of these episodes in quite a while, and especially since becoming a parent and now a parent of like a 7 and 4-year-old, but my daughter, especially the 4-year-old, she's always wanting to help, and I'm like, you can help me best by just going somewhere else. Anywhere else is more helpful than you trying to help me now.
Parenting 101, folks.
You should write a book, dude. That's fucking amazing. Just get the fuck out of here is what you can call it.
Here's how to
help. So we get a couple of scenes with Homer watching... Go ahead, Richie.
The Dallas Cowboys! Hell yeah. Homer Simpson is a Dallas Cowboys
Homer's
fanatic.
favorite team. Which is crazy because he's from Oregon, as we know now, being 20-something years later. But he's still, I know you always say it's America's team, or was
Cowboys
at one point before the St.
well.
Louis Saints stole that from you.
When you win one Super Bowl, you haven't stolen anything. And this is back in the 90s, and the Cowboys are actually about to win 3 more Super Bowls after this episode's already aired.
Oh, yeah, good point. I was just trying to rile you up. I know it pisses you off that the Saints try to steal that moniker.
Did you know that the 2 players they actually name in this episode that are Dallas Cowboys aren't actually Dallas Cowboys, but they're actually producers of the show?
I did read that little tidbit. I thought that was pretty cool. It's always fun when they give themselves nods. That I mean, producers never get enough credit in these types of things. Directors, writers, the behind the scenes folks of the show are not getting nearly enough credit at this time. So the fact that they are more or less immortalized in a pop culture phenomenon is pretty cool for them.
And I know you probably read that on IMDb, but I read that off my The Simpsons: A Complete Guide to Our Favorite Family.
Something else noting about the Dallas Cowboys that I thought was just somewhat interesting is they actually changed the name of the team in French Canadian versions to the Detroit Lions because, one, they also always have a Thanksgiving game, and two, that's like the closest NFL team in proximity to their part of Canada.
And the colors still kind of work for that because they just had the blue uniforms on, so that would actually work for the Lions.
Yeah, I meant to say that part too. And then the colors cross over because it's, from an animated version, they're very, very similar.
For 90s animation style.
Yeah, I thought that was kind of a cool fact that they change it up depending on what version you're watching. We get a scene next where Patty and Selma show up, and Homer goes from not wanting to have to go pick up his dad to immediately wanting to leave. But there's kind of a sad moment where Homer was trying to be nice and putting on a nice face, and still Patty and Selma are just like, so insincere. How does she put up with him? And it's just like, God damn, he cannot win for trying no matter what he does. That's about as nice as Homer's ever been to Patty and Selma, and they still just don't care.
Sisters-in-law.
I pretty much get along. We get into fights, but I for the most part, get along with my sister-in-law. Like, we like each other generally. Like, we piss each other off from time to time, but, it's not in, like, a hateful way, and I think we're always excited to see each other.
Well, and she's a cool individual.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
Yeah, I think watching that scene, though, I was like, that's definitely the nicest he's ever been to them that I can ever remember in any of the episodes.
Yeah, I think the episode where he had hair from a few back, also he was just in a generally more pleasant state. And also, though, they treated him much better because he was handsome. And that's kind of shows their fucked up shallow side in general as well. So
one of my favorite moments between Homer and Patty and Selma is the one episode where they're about to get fired from the DMV and Homer takes the blame for him. Like, that's I think the nicest Homer will ever be, but that scene always gets to me, man. Like, and then Homer mentions that they did it for Marge, not for them.
Right. He did it because he knew it would make Marge happy. So right after this, we do get Homer picking up his father from the nursing home. There's a really dark joke scene here where they announce the following good news for the following residents who have family members that wish they could be here today. And they just read out a list to all these poor old folks who are left to die. And yeah, it made me laugh, but also kind of go like groan a little bit because super dark humor. I love the fax comes through at the end, at the very end.
For all you millennials out there, a fax machine is something you used to receive messages on very, very slowly.
It's like a paper version of text messaging. There's also a part in here whenever Homer is leaving, he talks about how depressing this place is, and Grandpa's like, I have to live here. And then Homer's like, oh, well, I'm sure you get used to it after a while. Because, again, they're the ones that chose to lock him up there, presumably. Let's keep that in mind. When we get back to the Simpsons home, we meet Jackie Bouvier, Marge's mother, who is a very unpleasant woman. She has laryngitis, so she doesn't want to waste her voice, but she does want to make sure she gets out to Marge that she never does anything right.
Yeah, did y'all notice, too, whenever she gets out of the cab, the driver gets out, goes and opens the door for her, and then she gets out of the other side of the car and goes around it?
And then goes around the back door. I must have been
looking down during that. I completely missed that.
Right.
It's pretty funny. Yeah, the laryngitis gags that they have going with her, with like the things that she chooses to say of most importance, absolutely crack me up because she's just such a miserable old bitch.
I can't imagine having a mother like this. I know there's listeners out there that can, and there might be one or two hosts that can comment on that, but I can't imagine my mother ever acting like that.
My mom never acted like this, but my mom was crazier in her own special sort of way. We can get into that on some future episodes. But yeah, we get back to Thanksgiving dinner, and Lisa has been working. The reason she needed the glue earlier is she has been working on a centerpiece to honor some of her female heroes, warriors that never entered the battlefield, I believe is what she called them. And Bart seeing Lisa getting all this attention, has some issues with that. So he basically grabs the turkey and starts to Bart and showboat and, try to become the center of attention. Long story short, he ends up destroying and burning Lisa's centerpiece, to which a fight breaks out, of course, because Lisa had worked on this all day.
Yeah, and it's Bart's destructive nature getting the better of him, but it's also partially Homer's fault because Homer was the one trying to start the fire in the first place. And that led to it igniting when Bart threw the centerpiece into the fire. But I mean, we all know, we've already established Bart does actually care about things. He just gets a little selfish sometimes.
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely. And then when he gets in trouble and Marge is telling him, "Listen, you got to go apologize." He's like, "Why should I apologize? I've been that kid. Why should I apologize? Just because I destroyed their thing, they shouldn't have made that stupid thing."
For the record, that
funny.
centerpiece was taking out a lot of space on the table.
Valuable real estate.
Yeah.
Valuable real estate, that's what it was. Totally. I also really dug Homer's prayer during this scene. He starts praying at first for nuclear power, and then he starts talking about all the other better versions of power, except for solar, which is, of course, a pipe dream. That gave me a giggle. And then my favorite part is when things started to kind of break down a little bit, he starts talking about how they're the worst family ever. And everyone at the table excitedly agrees, or excitedly says amen, that they are, in fact, the worst family ever. Bart hates apologizing so much that he'd rather run away from home on Thanksgiving Day. Fortunately, Santa's little helper is being a terrible dog inside, gets kicked out by Homer, and now Bart has a companion to go walk the streets with. He heads to the nice part of town, presumably, or at least where Mr. Burns lives, because he sees Mr. Burns being served a elaborate meal by Mr. Smithers, enough to feed an army, to which Burns has just a couple of bites and then asks for the rest of it to be destroyed. Except for one of Smithers' famous pumpkin pies, which is cooling in the window. There's a great scene here that shows, once again, why the Simpsons writers are so much smarter than we are, in which Bart Simpson starts to steal the pie. It sets off an alarm. Actually, we get a notable first when Burns says, for the first time, "Release the hounds." A line that he will go on to say many, many times in the future. But this scene is really brilliant because when the alarm goes off, there's a couple of security guards that see him on camera and report to Mr. Burns. But what's so clever about it is one of the security guards is reading the book Les Mis, which in it has a main character who actually gets arrested or caught for stealing a loaf of bread out of a window, which is exactly what Bart Simpson is doing here.
This show actually will do throughout the years numerous Les Mis snippets in there. There's an episode in the future where Skinner's rummaging through the Springfield garage sale, basically at the elementary school, and he picks up a uniform and he goes, good old 24601, which is Jean Valjean's prisoner number in Les Mis. So they do a lot of tie-ins to that book, which, like you said, just proves how smart the writers are.
Exactly. Yeah, and it's something that I would have never noticed had it not been for IMDb. I just honestly am not familiar with that at all, but I love the fact that there's so many literature references that I do get. It makes me happy that I know that there's more out there that I could one day get on a new viewing. Perhaps while we're going through for this show, I'm going to see jokes that, despite seeing episodes dozens of times in the past, I'll still catch something new.
It's we also forgot to mention, before they got to Burns's place, Bart and Santa's little helper crawled through a pipeline that had El Barto sign marked on the outside of it.
Another El Barto. I think that's the third or fourth one now. I kind of lost track. Yeah, totally. Very cool. So we get back to the Simpsons home, where yet another example of the writers being really clever. Lisa is writing in her diary, "It was I've witnessed the best meals of my generation destroyed," which is a direct parody of Allen Ginsberg's Hal, which starts with, "I've witnessed the best minds of my generation destroyed by the madness." So again, just the fact that the poem was about turkey but still referenced this great poem, I just thought that was another fun That's the Harvard minds that bring a little bit extra. The part of the episodes that make you feel like you're learning something even if you don't mean to.
And then we get back to reality, where Bart does a job that Miles will one day take up as well.
Oh, selling blood?
Yeah.
Yeah. Totally, dude. You can take it, man. $12? Fuck yeah. No, they actually pay way better than that. I do plasma, and that shit pays $70 a week, and it's great. And it helps, like, tons of people with the whole, like, immunity diseases and whatnot. So, win-win. Puts money in my bank account and, like, makes lives better. What could go wrong? I don't need that plasma.
I just love that Bart uses Homer's ID to donate blood.
Yeah, relax, Homer. Oh my God, yeah, they don't look anything like. I understand the idea of using a fake ID, but I mean, come on, they really don't care.
They just want the blood,
dude. And like at the plasma center, dude, like they make you go through a shit ton of verification every time to make sure that you are who you say you are, and that you're not like over donating and whatnot. Because I mean, you can understand why there would be a use for abuse on that, like that people could have taken advantage of that and really hurt themselves.
Yeah, you can bleed, right?
Aaron, have you ever had the point where you had to donate blood?
I have donated blood, not at the point where I was desperate for $12.
I was gonna say I don't do it out of desperation. I mean, I think it's easy money and it's a good use of 2 hours of my week.
Sure.
Well, I'm just kind of sour on it because Miles tried to get me to do it one time, and after I started filling out paperwork, they started asking me more in-depth questions, and were like, "Oh, you're Richie? You can't donate."
It's because you're diabetic. It's not because you're named Richie. That would be a really fucked up reason not to let people donate. There is another really small scene right here that I really like just because I have a dog and they've absolutely done this to me before, where Bart and Santa's Little Helper are walking along together and Bart's stomach growls to the point where Santa's Little Helper growls back at it. And my dog Nash has absolutely done that to me before, where my stomach will make like a growling noise. And he's like an immediate barker. He thinks he's a little Napoleon is what he is. He's a little big man, or he's a tiny little dog that thinks he's like the big man on campus. So he hears noises and he just instinctively like barks at them. So that scene really made me laugh. But we get back to Bart getting his $12 whole for giving blood. He's really excited, so excited that he passes out. When he wakes up, he's being helped up by some homeless people and taken into a homeless shelter for a nice hot Thanksgiving meal. Viva Skid Row.
Did y'all notice though when he walks across, it immediately goes from the nice side of town to cool, the wrong side of the tracks. And then you see the pawn store, the liquor store, and in front of the liquor store has a sign that says, "Yes, we have rock gut." I thought that sign kind of caught me off guard. I was like, "Rock gut, yeah."
Which I will admit, after watching this episode, it actually reminded me of a time I went to a buddy's wedding in Dallas. And you see these metaphors and the way they do things on the show or in cartoons, and you think they're all over exaggerations. But literally, they had a wedding deep in the nice part of Dallas. But we were going to meet somewhere before to all follow each other to the hotel. And literally the directions to go to where we meet, I literally went over an intersection, and right on the other side it got like shitty Dallas instantaneously. And I never even thought that was possible, but it was literally night and day. I could not believe it.
Yeah, it happens in a lot of big cities. And there's this thing that I had recently explained to me that I'm probably going to offend somebody by telling this story just because I know I'm going to use some politically incorrect terms. But long story short is it turns out lots of gay people tend to go into really shitty, like, rundown areas and buy property for super cheap and then, like, beautify that shit and make it an awesome neighborhood. So you will find places in Dallas that I've been to where, like, you're walking around and it's, like, just awesome restaurants and bars and then like various like shops, and then like you go one street further and it's like crack den and a bunch of for sale signs, and then like a flock of gay people just running down the street buying up all the property and then making it awesome again. So long story short is if you got shitty downtown, you want gay people to come in and just take that shit over because it becomes fucking awesome. It's basically like that episode of South Park where all the boys are getting into metrosexuality, and like certain parts of South Park, they get better because of that episode.
So you're saying that gay people are crab people?
Not at all. I mean, I'm sure the fair percentage of them do have crabs, just like straight people. I just don't think that has anything to do with their sexual orientation.
Crab people. Crab people look like crab, talk like
Taste
people.
like people. Did I just say taste? Oops. That's weird. It's Halloween. I just watched Cannibal Holocaust. It gave me a weird desire. Anyway, so back at the homeless shelter, Kent Brockman is doing an expose where he really is just being a dick to homeless people. He starts saying all of the awful names that, you would call them not to their face, right in front of them. Talks about how we need to sweep them into the gutter, or if they're already into the gutter, some less in the way place. And this is the one day of a year that we like to throw these people a bone, specifically a turkey bone. I thought this was funny just because we get to see a little bit more fleshed out Kent Brockman.
Yeah, they're finally establishing his parameters as a character.
Right. He's kind of just a douchebag that says whatever he needs to get the ratings. And, that honestly is probably a lot of newscasters.
What I liked is right before Kent Brockman's story started is it was inside the Simpsons home while they were gathering around the TV to watch. And the little quote that Grandpa had about Homer at that part, where he's talking about his son, and he says, Homer was stubborn. Homer was never stubborn. He always folded instantly over anything. It was as if he had no will of his own. Isn't that true, Homer? And he just says, yes, Dad.
Yeah. Homer, and sadly that's pretty true to Homer's character for the most part. He's pretty easily duped into quite a few things over the years. Didn't he almost destroy the world on more than one occasion?
Well, he also was okay with the bear tax once, but
True. Bart manages to weasel himself on camera for an interview with Kent Brockman, and his interview happens to air right at the moment when Lisa is debuting her poem that she's been working so hard on, and everybody is kind of like, oh, we don't care about Lisa again, Bart's on TV, oh my god, where's Bart? Bart is talking about how he's been on the streets for 5 years, and, it's been really tough, and blah, 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 blah. But we all know that's bullshit, and so does Bart, because we get another one of those moments where Bart kind of shows his true colors as not a complete dick. He does some pretty douchey, selfish things, but he's got a heart. Because whenever he's talking to the rest of the homeless folks and they're all breaking up from dinner, they kind of talk about hey, where are you going to go? And some of them are like, oh, I'm going to go sleep in that trash can or on that stoop. And he's all like, oh, well, I've got this family I hang out with. And they're like, oh, that sounds nice. So if it wouldn't be weird that Bart says he wanted to give them the $12 he had made from selling his blood, to which they both agree they have no problem with that whatsoever. But I just like that moment for Bart's character because, again, it shows that, yeah, Bart can be a bit of a dick, but ultimately he's still a good person.
He has a good heart when it comes down to it. And he still hasn't learned his lesson for the episode yet, because that comes in a scene here in a little while. But again, with this being a Thanksgiving episode, it's kind of the meaning of Thanksgiving, so to speak. So they had to throw that in there a little bit, I think.
Sure. Going against the meaning of Thanksgiving, we get a couple of other moments with Marge's mother that I really like, where she uses her voice, her limited voice due to her laryngitis once again, to comment about how she wished she hadn't have come. And then immediately after says, I would say something comforting about Bart, but, my voice.
I like that one.
I also dig the fact that Grandpa is concerned that he needs to get back to the home because if he's not there by 9, they're going to presume he's dead.
And take his insurance money.
Absolutely. We get Bart heading back to the house. It's getting close to the end of the day. The Simpsons family have been worried looking for Bart. Bart has been just happy that he doesn't have to apologize. So much so that he has this twisted little dream about everything, the world turning to shit if he has to apologize to his sister, which, good lord, I don't know if I've ever not wanted to apologize that bad, but that was a pretty intense scene. I do like, however, that Bart immediately after that decides to climb up on the roof to hang out, and he finds a treasure of lost toys. Frisbees, airplanes, tennis balls, footballs, any type of balls. They're all there. All of his toys that he's lost to the roof. Aaron, over under on the number of things on your roof right now.
So that's, watching this as a kid or even as a teenager, I never thought much about that scene. I thought, oh yeah, there's probably stuff up there. But as an adult, I look on my roof fairly often. I mean, as I'm driving up or whatever, and I can't imagine anything being up there longer than a couple days without me saying, I got to get that down. But my kids couldn't throw anything on top of my roof if they wanted to. If it's something up there, it's probably something I got up there, I'm sure.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah, dude. We use our roof now every year to watch fireworks. We climb up there and watch fireworks on the 4th of July because we can just so happen to see like 3 fireworks shows. So it works out pretty cool. But yeah, I get on the roof. I always wanted to go play on the roof whenever I was a kid, but like my parents were like hard no on that. I did think this was funny because at my school, there really was this like day of the year that, because we had a really flat roof at the school building I was at, and if things went up there, they stayed up there. Like they were not coming down. But we had periodic days throughout the year where like the janitor, you'd see him like busting out the ladders and they'd go up and they would just start throwing shit off the roof. And it was like Christmas because all of the stuff that had been lost was just coming down in waves.
Yeah, I can imagine that'd be a totally different story on a big flat roof like that. It kind of makes me want to get a ladder and go around to some of these elementary schools to see what I can find.
Right? You don't even have to go Christmas shopping this year, dude. You just got that shit covered. So your daughter might get a used football. That's fine. Don't support gender roles. She can do what she wants to do.
Half-chewed boomerang.
So Bart hears Lisa crying through the pipe, and because he again is not a terrible person, he starts talking down to Lisa, and Lisa comes to the roof and they have a heartfelt conversation. Bart says something that absolutely kills me when he announces, "I don't know why I did it. I don't know why I enjoy doing it. And I don't know why I'll do it again. I just do." And that kind of sums up Bart. He just is mischievous for the sake of mischievous sometimes. But Lisa convinces him to search himself and look deep inside himself to find that part of him that wants to tell his sister that he's sorry for hurting her. And lo and behold, it works. And Bart actually does reason with himself and realize, you know what? I upset her and that sucks. So I'm sorry, Lisa. To which Lisa forgives them. They all go down to enjoy Thanksgiving together as a family, and like a lot of Simpsons episodes, this one ends on a prayer when they thank the Lord for giving their family one more chance at togetherness.
I thought one line that caught me off guard is while Bart's on the roof and Lisa's down there writing and crying, before he hears her, though, she says she's sad that he's gone and says that it's most likely her fault because she failed to take his abuse with good humor. And it kind of caught me off guard. I was like, man, I don't know if they'd air that today, something like that with, all the different issues with, domestic violence and stuff like that. I thought that was just kind of that one caught me bad. I was like, whoa.
That's a really interesting observation. Yeah, with the way that I mean, I'm not trying to say I endorse people getting beat in their home at all, but yeah, definitely in the media right now, it's more active than ever, and you're right, that would probably trigger some people or some groups of people that would make an argument that could be taken as like, oh, so you're trying to train women to just take abuse in life, which I don't think that's fair of this scene regardless, but I could definitely see that would create
Yeah, no, I mean, I kind of giggled at it and moved on, but it struck me as, I don't know if they would do that today.
And well, the way Lisa said it was a little bit of a gloomy way that she said it. I think they would still do it in today's Simpsons, but I think they would make it sound sarcastic and make it a flat out joke. Whereas this was kind of like you said, it goes, oh, she kind of said that like with a little bit of seriousness behind it.
It's one of those moments where this show hits you with the it's not all humor, this show, which is the interesting thing. I mean, so there's lines that are funnier than others, and there's some absolute laugh out loud moments, but there are a lot of more deeper feelings in this show than I remember as a kid.
Absolutely.
Just across the board. So, that pretty much sums up Bart vs. Thanksgiving. Aaron, is there anything else that you noted on this episode or anything else that caught your eye that you'd like to discuss before we move on?
There were a few things that I kind of chuckled at. Of course, now again watching them as an adult with kids and all this, but I mean seeing Bart be the kind of little jerk that he is and being selfish and everything, and but it flip flopping throughout the whole episode. Like when he first leaves the house and he jumps down and he stomps on the flowers and he's like, uh-oh. And he's like, I mean, good. Like, and I've been, I've done that. I've been the one that was like, oh, Mom's going to be mad about that. And be like, oh, but I'm mad at Mom, so good. I'll smash her flowers. And
You go from like, oh, fuck to fuck it really fast.
Right, and then it kind of does some of the things we've talked about all the way through, and then but at the very end, I kind of laughed, and I would say this episode's kind of, it's not by far one of my favorites. There were only a handful of moments where I kind of chuckled, I guess, but right there at the very end, when Marge and Homer are hearing them talk on the roof and apologize. First of all, they don't know Bart's home, and they're both in their pajamas, like, well, I guess we're just going to go to bed. We don't care if our kid's still out there. And then Homer overhears them, talking. He's like, we're good parents. And I think that happens a handful of times throughout the series where Homer's like, we're good parents. Like, I don't know if you'd go that far yet, but, hey, it worked out for you.
Absolutely.
That was a great observation. They're already in bed.
Yeah, really good. Missing. They are. They're just like, I guess we'll be searching for our son in the morning. How much trouble could he get into on Thanksgiving?
Yeah, but on the flip side, we're good parents.
He's going to get trampled by Black Friday jobbers. Richie, do you or that book of yours have anything that you want to add on Bart vs. Thanksgiving?
Well, I have one observation I want to point out. Before Bart goes up on the roof, he has that little dream sequence when he's about to open the door where he sees all his family members yelling at him for all the terrible things he's done. And in Bart's vision, Maggie Simpson telekinetically or however you want to say it, talks to him in his mind. So this is another either Maggie is a Muggle-born witch or Maggie is a Jedi Master moment right here, because if Bart's having a vision,
and that could go either way.
Yeah, it could go. It works for both scenarios. So I just want to say that theory is still alive and it still works. And we're already halfway through season 2 almost, and it's still very prominent. So I want to throw that out there.
We don't know that was a Bart dream. It could have been Maggie implanting a vision.
Exactly.
We don't know.
Exactly. That way Bart could go up on the roof and hear Lisa crying. So, Maggie is the mastermind in this family.
She absolutely is.
And then my guidebook points out a couple things here. It says the electrical outlets in the Simpsons house have no hole for the ground plug, which is a neat observation. And going on the roof, though the roof of the Simpsons house is significantly graded, balls still get stuck on it. The purpose of that is so that things aren't stuck up there, and you can see the angle of the roof. So it's amazing that all that junk is actually stuck up on the roof.
Yeah, that's a good point. We talked about flat roofs earlier. We didn't talk about the fact that the Simpsons have a significant pitch on that thing. So you're right. It's pretty bizarre that there's so much stuff up there, actually.
And that's it on the guidebook.
Awesome. Well, that's going to do it for Bart vs. Thanksgiving, but we have another episode to talk about, and something we've mentioned before, but I think it's pretty special. This is Matt Groening's favorite episode of the entire series. Of all 20-whatever seasons there have been so far, this is the creator's favorite, and I think that speaks volumes. I don't know that I rate it as high as he does, but I'm really happy that he likes it so much. That's kind of cool to know. This is Bart the Daredevil, which aired on December 6th, 1990. The chalkboard gag was I will not drive the principal's car. Meh. Couch gag was Maggie getting tossed off with a single cushion and landing directly in front of the television.
She's a Jedi Master.
Another Jedi Master trick. Again, could also be a witch. Both of those work there. And notable first appearance of somebody we're going to get to know a lot better throughout the course of this series. This is the first appearance of Dr. Julius Hibberts. We start this episode with some wrestling. The Simpsons family, be it in the living room or at Moe's, depending on which member you are sitting down for the big wrestling match. Bart is super excited about this matchup. It's a matchup of two titans, and this is going to be one hell of a match, he says, to which Lisa starts trolling all wrestling fans, you little bitch. Yes, I know it's fake, for fuck's sake. But Homer doesn't, and seemingly neither does Bart, because we immediately cut to the bar, where Homer basically says line for line exactly what Bart just did, and also agrees this is going to be one hell of a match.
I love the mirroring in the opening scene between Bart and Homer. It's so eloquently done. That's what I wanted to say. For being a wrestling match.
Fuck you. So, a really good scene in this before we move on to the real topic of this show, before we get to the real catalyst for this show, I should say. There's a moment between Bart and Milhouse where Bart is such a dick to Milhouse, but it totally defines their relationship. Bart is sitting like a foot and a half away from the television. Milhouse is on the couch, and Bart asks Milhouse if he can turn it up. in which Milhouse, for some reason, doesn't say "fuck you, turn it up yourself," but actually complies, and Bart steals his seat.
He didn't call seat check, for the record.
I heard no seat check. The rules are clear.
Even in 1990.
I don't know how Milhouse couldn't know them. So the wrestling match ends by way of wrench to the back of the head, as most wrestling matches do these days. And we get an advertisement for the Monster Truck Rally, featuring Truckosaurus and lots of other cool things. I actually really wanted to see the dunking motorcycle team. I thought that sounded
Did you notice the last
cool.
biker missed his dunk?
Yeah, I saw that.
I did not. I think I was writing down, like, dope, motorcycle dunkers. That seems cool. But regardless, Homer is so excited, he comes running out of the bar. Bart's so excited, he comes running out of the house. They both meet in the yard, hugging in joy. And they pitch the idea to the family that as a family grow thing, Bart and Homer feel that they should all go to the Monster Truck show on Saturday. To which Lisa and Marge are like, "Aren't you forgetting something?" And Homer goes through the checklist. Let's see, monster trucks, family grow thing. Nope, I think I got it all. But it turns out Lisa's having a recital on Saturday itself. But Marge comes in to save the day when she reminds Homer that Lisa's recital is at 5:30 and the Monster Truck show is not till 8, so they can go to both.
Marge, the
Before
savior
that,
of
though,
the
you get Homer's, "Oh, cruel fate, why do you mock me?"
Yeah, that's a great line. Yeah, you're right. He's very upset about his daughter's recital.
Can I point something out here real quick that I just had a thought of in relation to Homer leaving Moe's Tavern? If Homer can watch the same commercial as Bart, leave the bar, get in his car, and drive home by the time Bart walks outside, doesn't that mean that he lives within walking distance of Moe's?
But he's Homer, so he would drive anyway.
I'm just saying he could save a lot of trouble in the future if he just walked to the bar every day.
True, and it'd probably be better for his health too, but he doesn't. Regardless, that's not a Homer
He's
thing to
Homer.
do. So, Aaron, I've got to ask, sir, what is the most disappointing thing that you have ever had to miss because you had to attend something for your children?
I can't think of anything I've had to actually miss. I mean, of course, growing up now versus then, now if there's something, you can record it or whatever. The only thing I would have had to have missed would have been some sort of live event or a party or something. But, my kids are young enough that their events are all, school parties during the day and stuff like that.
So, yeah, it hasn't been a burden to you yet, but it's coming, sir.
Right.
It's coming.
Right. Now, as they get older and it's sports and actual recitals that are at night and stuff, I'm sure it's going to happen.
Yeah, when your daughter has a playoff game and your son has a dance recital and they're both on the same night, what are you going to do?
Yeah, it's going to be tough. Tough decisions. Choose which one I love most, I guess.
There you go, the moment of truth. You should just let them know that's how it's going to work. Like, all right, kids, on a weekly basis, you guys are competing for daddy's love, and whichever one earns my love the most, that's who's whatever I'm going to go to. I feel like that's a fair way to parent. That way you set the expectations for the kids. They know what they're striving for, and they have no one to blame but themselves when they go home unloved that night.
Well, and that's very much the Homer way of parenting, too. If you think ahead to the episodes where they're playing hockey against each other.
That added pressure
Very
on
much the way
children
he does
always
it.
works out just fine.
I also really love, speaking of children who need therapy in the future, Lisa has a quote where she says, "Dad, if you miss my recital on Saturday, you better start looking for a therapist on Sunday." Perfect, Lisa, because it's so deadpan, and I don't think it's a threat as much as it is just an honest observation.
Well, I think the surprising thing about that statement, too, is despite how smart and clever Lisa is, that she still really cares about Homer being at her recital. Like, you would think she would understand her father enough to know that, like, he doesn't do it on purpose and he's not mad about her, but she takes it like she's still a kid at heart is what I'm getting at, I guess. Is like she really wants her parents to both be there.
Well, absolutely. It's a running theme throughout the show that Lisa is always looking for ways to spend time with her dad. She does, she knows that he cares about her, but she needs quality time from him regardless because she's an 8-year-old girl, and I mean everyone likes quality time. So I'm jumping way ahead, but I think there's an episode not too far away where there's some museum exhibit in town that Lisa and Homer both attend together, but it's a temporary exhibit, so it eventually goes out of town, and it's like a real sad moment for Lisa because she lost this thing that she participates with her dad. That's like far seasons away. It's in like 19 or 20 or something like that. Yeah, they do end up breaking.
Man, it's funny, and it speaks to volumes about the show, because every time one of us goes, that reminds me of an episode seasons ahead. I think we both do this where we already know what episode the other person's going to talk about, and I think that has a lot of staying power on how strong this show actually is. Because like as soon as you said that reminds me of another episode, I was like, yeah, the museum one in my head, and then you immediately said that. That's Matt Groening.
It's like the family is so good at their characters are so defined that like you can kind of see the tapestry of this like long going world expanding even in the roots of these early episodes. So you get these moments that show down the road that the voice actors, the writers, the entire crew of the show really knew the characters at this point. They really set a foundation for this show for the long run.
Good call.
So we get to the recital itself. Much to Homer's dismay, it's the first in a series of Saturday Night Symphonies. And probably my absolute favorite moment in the entire show, Ned Flanders is sitting in front of The Simpsons. He's very excited to be there. He's, compliments Lisa's saxophone
her
fingering. Yeah, her fingering's come a long way. And he's really excited, as is his brother, for, was it Todd's violin solo? Or it was Rod or Todd. One of the two is playing. One of them's in the audience. Regardless, Ned is so moved by his son's performance that he starts to tear up, to which Homer tells him, come on, Flanders, he's not that bad.
Yeah. Ever since I was a kid, I love that moment, man. It's so perfectly Homer.
Oh, absolutely.
What I liked is that at the beginning of the recital, the guy sitting behind Marge has to lean around her hair to see.
Dude, Marge would be the absolute worst person to sit behind. It's like, I already said earlier, I'm a wrestling fan, and there's nothing fucking worse than going to a wrestling fan and sitting behind one of those douchebags that have a sign. And especially because that douchebag is always some 6-year-old kid that just wants to declare their love for John Cena or Bailey or whoever it is. And it's like, I want them to have that special connection, but get your fucking sign out of my face, kid. I'm trying to watch. There's adults present, damn it.
What's wrestling?
Yeah. It's the real version of the UFC you may have seen. That stuff's all fake.
Now, I noted the recital they talked about. They're playing Schubert's Unfinished Symphony. But doesn't the band director, at least in later episodes, he seems to only play John Philip Sousa? Isn't that right? When they do the competition and they're like, well, what do you mean play something else only arranged by John Philip Sousa?
I completely forgot about that too, man.
So when I heard him say we're playing Schubert, I was like, oh, and again, I hadn't watched some of these older episodes in a long time. I thought maybe this is one of the few times you actually see him playing something that's not.
Maybe they didn't want to do a series of Saturday nights anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, I honestly didn't even catch that at all. That's awesome. Good observation. I do like, though, however, that during the entire performance, Homer is getting more and more visibly impatient. During the big finale, everybody is going crazy and it's super excited, and you see Homer in the back row tapping his watch, like, come on, the monster trucks are about to start. And as soon as the performance ends and they're about to take their bow, Homer rips Lisa off the stage. He does take her back to do a quick bow, which is an awesome moment. And then they are in the car and they are on their way to see Truckosaurus. Maybe a little more closely than they thought they were going to.
Now, I will admit, what Homer does in the car on the scene where they're driving, I have actually done that exact same thing, humming the exact same song because of this episode, where Lisa has that great moment where she's got this big smile on her face and she goes, she's happy that she reached Homer with her music, and he's doing the da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da honk honk. Like, I've done that before when I'm in a rush.
Oh yeah, dude. Yeah, Lisa, when she's so happy, that goes back to what we were just talking about. Like that little moment between Lisa and Homer shows the heart of this show again, and the fact that at the end of the day, they're a mom and daughter. I'm sorry, they're a dad and daughter. And I mean, I'm sure Aaron can attest for the fact that you've got a really special relationship with that. And even though you might be more interested in things like football or baseball, which, traditionally are things that your son is more likely to be interested in. You know that if your daughter wants you to fucking sit down and have a princess tea party, then you're going to put on your fanciest tiara and you're going to sip tea with your daughter.
That's right.
Because that's what men do, damn it.
Well, I just like how Lisa takes it as a victory when she just has that little smirk on her face and she knows that she reached him in a way and had a lasting effect. That's the part I like. Is to most people that's not a victory because he's rushing you out of it to get to the Truckosaurus. But like she takes the victory and she understands it actually is a victory for her.
Yeah, definitely. Even those little moments, but I mean that was huge in terms of connection to getting into Homer's limited mind.
Yeah, and we've established very well that this show is more so about the little moments, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah, that you're totally right. It's the little bit pieces here and there that just make the show shine and connect. Like that's where the connections are made to where you actually, for whatever reason, feel really close to these characters even though they're totally animated.
Just to throw this out there, everybody should go to the Fans Podcast and listen to the best darn diddly review show of The Simpsons.
You just got that same tweet too, huh? Oops. There you go. That's a meta plug right there.
A plug within a plug.
So, the monster truck rally severely lacks security as the Simpsons are able to drive right into the middle of the arena and become quickly the victim of none other than the star attraction Truckosaurus.
Which, for a regular monster truck show, I've never been to one, but if Truckosaurus is your headliner, wouldn't it be like one of the last events?
Well, they were getting there late, so I think that the last event was, as we know, special guest Captain Lance Murdoch, but I believe that Truckosaurus was on right before him, wasn't he?
Yeah, but I'm saying that means they literally left Lisa's recital knowing they wouldn't get there until it was almost over.
Yeah, but they just wanted to see Truckosaurus. That was, I mean, don't get me wrong, they wanted to see the dunking motorcycle team and the other monster trucks,
yeah, they were
but
excited about the
they were
trucks.
there. They were there for Truckosaurus, sir. That was the driving passion of this entire episode. I mean, if you didn't get that, I'm worried that you missed the running theme of this show, Richie.
Don't slap me in my face with my own gimmick.
We do get to the main event after Truckosaurus, the special feature, I guess, the special attraction.
Whoa,
none other.
You're jumping ahead here, buddy. You forgot to point out once again that Maggie is special.
Did I miss another magical Maggie moment?
My guidebook points out that while Truckosaurus is tossing around the Simpsons car, that nobody's wearing a seatbelt except for Maggie Simpson. Now, because Maggie's staying in place the entire time the car's being tossed around. Now, I read this note before I watched the episode, so I tried to look, and I never actually saw a seatbelt anywhere on Maggie. And I know on the baby seats, it's usually towards the bottom, but I think it makes more sense that she is a Jedi Master and can stay in place while the car is being tossed around.
I just realized Aaron's probably super confused. We had our friend Dr. Andy Briseno on the show a few weeks ago. It was actually back in season 1. And he came up with the theory that Maggie Simpson is in fact a muggle-born witch a la Harry Potter. Because if you watch the series, there are many, many moments that Maggie seems to have either possess or do supernatural ability. Maggie seems to possess supernatural abilities or be able to survive via supernatural ways. And the weird thing is how often we see this running throughout the series. Like, whenever Andy pitched it, we were kind of like, yeah, we all smoke weed, bro. But when we start to watch this show, it gets a little bit more, wow, there are a lot of moments where Maggie actually does seem to possess some sort of supernatural power.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. Especially when you're watching through it with that mindset, you're gonna see lots of stuff. And I thought it was funny watching everybody get tossed around, and she's just like sucking on her pacifier, just looking straight ahead, like whatever.
The force is strong in that one.
Yeah, she's just chill, man.
She doesn't have a wand
Yeah.
too. That's why I've been starting to lean the last 2 weeks towards Jedi Master.
Interesting, but she's too young at this point. She wouldn't have been assigned to one
But
yet.
she's super powerful though, so there's got to be something driving that power, a la the Force.
Well, if you get deep into the Harry Potter mythology, you learn that real true wizards can do very powerful magic even without a wand.
Well, we will find out over the next 27 seasons.
I guess so. So, we get to the man who, if not in action, is in traction, Captain Lance Murdoch, who I thought it was fun. He's a Daredevil in the air of sort of Evel Knievel type of guy, but he was actually modeled or portrayed as a combination of H.M. Murdoch from the A-Team and Matt Murdock from the comic book series Daredevil, which, is a fun twist on the fact that he's a Daredevil and Daredevil's a Daredevil. You get the connection.
And he's kind of blind to what he's doing at times.
That's also true. For this attraction, Lance Murdoch will be jumping over a giant swimming pool filled with all sorts of dangerous aquatic life. And just to add some flair, it will also have the king of the jungle, a lion, and a single drop of his own blood to stir up the feasting beasties, if you will. I love that he makes the jump no problem, and while waving to the crowd, topples over on his standing bicycle or on his standing motorbike and falls into the shark and eel and lion and blood infested waters.
I like that the lion makes the most prominent attack out of all the animals, though. That's just kind of like, you made it so much worse by adding the lion, and now you have to suffer because of it, which makes no sense since they're in a pool.
Yeah, it's actually, he seems to escape pretty much scathe-free, and then gets pulled back into the mess by the lion himself.
Yeah.
So this absolutely connects with Bart. Bart is fascinated with the concept of being a daredevil. He falls asleep on the way home and has a dream himself that he is now the boy who, if not in class, is risking his ass and wants to start doing stunts on his skateboard. Of course, this ends terribly when he tries to jump over his parents' car for the first time, and he's got Milhouse and a couple other of the boys over, and they all see him wreck and crash, and they're like, oh no, he's hurt! Bad! Let's get out of here! And I can kind of relate with this, because I totally remember as a kid, like, anytime your friends got hurt, your first thought was like, oh shit, I am in so much trouble. No matter how hurt you wanted them to, like, be okay, but, like,
you're worried about your
we're
own
all
ass.
selfish little shits. Yeah, we all immediately go to, oh my god, I'm grounded
forever.
forever.
I was here.
Yo, I was always in the ER when I was a kid.
It doesn't surprise me about you.
The best was, like, so when I was in second grade, I don't know, my parents were at, so it was a New Year's Eve, and they were at I think they were up at, like, the church or something. All the parents were up there, and then, like, they had a couple of the teenagers, like, watching all the kids. And so there's probably, 10 to 12 kids in our house, and a couple of teenagers are supposed to be babysitting us. Well, midnight hits, and I go jumping over the couch, which was, like, in the middle. It, like, divided our living room, which I did this all the time. I'd jump over the couch because someone was at the door, and I'd go answer the door. Well, for whatever reason, when I did it this time, I slipped, came down, landed, and broke my arm. And, of course, I was the one actually hurt, so it wasn't like I was trying to get away. However, when my mom gets home and I'm laying on the couch and I'm all crying and stuff, she just looks at me and says, "We told y'all not to be rowdy." And that's it. And they didn't take me to the hospital the next day when they're like, I think he might have actually really hurt his arm.
They're like, quit your bitching, you're grounded.
Oh, yeah, it was, and then, like, again, that was the one thing I wanted was the sympathy from my mom, and she's like, no, not having that.
Always slightly out of reach.
Right.
Something I wanted to bring up about this, though, and I'm sure Aaron will have some thought on this as well. And I know Homer and Marge start to recognize things in Bart, but I'm sorry, when you take your son to see a Daredevil show and you see how into it he is, because it's very obvious how into it he is, shouldn't they have had a talk with Bart sooner about what he was watching? Like, shouldn't they have explained the situation to him, especially when you see that your child is that interested in it? Because I know my parents, my dad would have sat me down that night and been like, don't you dare try to do this stuff, like this is serious. Not that it would have stopped Bart or myself from trying it, but you think they would have had a talk with him sooner about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, as I say, Aaron is going to have way more insight on this than I will, because I would just, and this is the reason I'm an uncle and not a father, but, like, I would just be like, try it. What could go wrong? If it hurts, don't do it again.
Yeah, I haven't, my kids haven't done anything, we haven't watched anything crazy like, well, I don't know, I take that back. There's definitely plenty of times on TV that I'm like, listen now, these are actors, Noah will come in while I'm watching, like, The Walking Dead and stuff, so it's not so much things that he has to try as much as I have to be like, listen, this isn't real, or, he is into superheroes, though, so I do have to, hey, we're not trying to fly off the back of the
I hope
couch.
he didn't
That's
walk
not
in during
happening,
last night's episode. That would have been awful.
So I have to watch it the day after, and I'm halfway through it. I have not had a hard time watching one episode until this one. It was tough, and I've only got halfway through it.
We record a little bit earlier than these air, so this is or we're recording right after the Negan incident that occurred on Walking Dead. So there you go. Anyway, we get back to The Simpsons with Bart being injured and his friends fleeing. Oh, I was gonna say I did break my hand once playing, or I'm sorry, my wrist once playing basketball. You guys probably did this too. We do the thing where we lower the rim all the way as low as it'll go, and then we're doing like dunking on each other and whatnot. And I go up for a dunk, and I actually like just pretty much get stuffed by like my much older, taller friend, and I just get slammed to the ground, and I land on my arm, and wrist is broken. And to be fair, this dude was cool. Like, everybody else totally fleed. Like, they're just like, I'm out. But the kid, like I said, he was a couple years older than me, and the kid that actually hurt me, to be fair, like, he stuck by me and, like, you know, made sure my parents knew what happened. And, like, everything was cool. My parents didn't even end up being pissed. But I remember we were actually about to go to a wedding, and I had been being a brat all day about it. Like, I didn't want to go. So my first thought was, oh my God, my parents are going to think I did this so that I didn't have to go to this wedding. Which, of course, they didn't, because that's fucking crazy. Like, to break your arm to not go to a wedding. But to be fair, when you're like, I was in like 4th grade, so weddings suck, because, like, you know, open bar means nothing to me. It was just like, oh, I have to put on, like, adult clothes and go watch people kiss, and ugh. So, I do remember that, but Bart's goes even worse, because all of his friends flee, but his parents take him to see, for the first time, but not the last time. Actually, Homer will probably see him more times throughout the series, but Dr. Julius Hibbert. And I found a really interesting, fun fact about Dr. Hibbert that I did not know until earlier today, actually. And that is that when Dr. Hibbert was first being created, he was Dr. Julia Hibbert, a female who actually ended up being voiced by Julia Hibbert at the time through marriage, who is actually Julia Sweeney, who you may recognize. But I mentioned earlier, this season, The Simpsons moved from Sunday night to Thursday night, and they directly competed with none other than The Cosby Show. And Dr. Hibbert was changed to an African-American male doctor to be a direct parody of Cosby's own Dr. Cliff Huxtable.
That's a really interesting fact, especially when you're talking about the 90s, when they were going to have like a somewhat major side character that would be black and a woman. Like, that's pretty awesome, actually.
Yeah, I thought it was an interesting change-up, but it makes a lot of sense, and it kind of fits with what The Simpsons did, because of course it's by no means a mean parody. I mean, Dr. Hibbert when I look at Dr. Hibbert now, I kind of get, with like the laugh and everything, a little bit of Cosby's character on that show. So I thought it was a pretty cool fact.
Well, I like the next scene, and this one's for all the lovely wrestling fans out there in the fans podcast land. when Dr. Hibbert takes Bart into the room of all the kids that have been hurt, reenacting things they saw on TV or in movies or watching wrestling for example. So I want to throw this out there. The Simpsons have just proven that wrestling is actually bad.
What?
Because a kid reenacted what he saw in a wrestling match and hit this other poor kid in the leg with a wrench, just like the opening wrestling episode happened. And so with all you parents out there and all you wrestling fans out there, a lot of you are older, you should not reenact what you see on the wrestling channel. There's all these videos online of dads body slamming their kids around and joking around and having a good time. But when you accidentally body slam your kid through a table, I don't want you to come crying to this network.
Firstly, there is a disclaimer that comes on before every single time you watch wrestling, to the point where it's fucking annoying.
Do you ever read all the terms and conditions before you sign for apps and things like
Sir,
that?
Sir, I was a human centipad before being a human centipad was cool. And I think about that episode every time I click the I agree now without
I do
but
too,
like
absolutely.
it doesn't make me read any of that shit. Has anybody ever read a user agreement, honestly?
But I do think about the fact that I might be using some experiment that I don't know I'm acknowledging.
Sure. I did actually like the idea when they did the little nod. They're like, after a recent wrestling match, we had an unusual outbreak of kids hitting each other in the head with a wrench. And, you know, to your point. But I also really enjoyed that he was not going to subject them to the horrors of the Three Stooges ward.
That was great, yeah.
The next...
that would be a pretty big ward, actually.
It probably would be. I really appreciated this next little tidbit, and it also airs just a little bit of foreshadowing to Marge's next episode, I believe, or a real quick one coming up if not. But Marge talks about, like, wow, it sure seems like kids imitating things they see on TV is a huge problem. And Dr. Hibbert immediately shuts that down by saying, like, well, yes, but it's all totally worth it and balances out due to the thousands of hours of entertainment it provides. But yeah, I like that this is the second or third time now we've seen Marge kind of make a comment showing that she is going to go after television violence.
Yeah, did you say that? Is that the very next episode?
Let me look. I believe it is the very next episode.
I think you're right. I actually have it right here. Itchy and Scratchy and Marge. Yep, the very next episode.
So the very next episode, we will be seeing the payoff for these hints that they've been dropping the last few episodes.
Which is really just an episode about Maggie trying to determine how much power she has with the Force and accidentally uses a little too much Force.
Probably. After this meeting, Bart gives Dr. Hibbert this really pathetically trying to be heartfelt, like, oh, I've learned so much today. I'm never going to imitate things on TV again. But I love the fact that Dr. Hibbert knows exactly what Bart is doing is just like, like pretty much like, should I just book you an appointment for next week?
It's Bart the Chameleon, man. He always does that.
Well, Bart's taste for big-time stunts is growing. He jumps over cars. He jumps over pools. He jumps over pets. He even jumps over Homer napping in his hammock. But he wants to do something that's going to really get the kids' attention, and they happen to have a field trip to the Springfield Gorge, where he announces that he will, in fact, be jumping that gorge on his skateboard. He says this to Otto, who, as the only adult there, feels it's probably a good idea that he says something, and he does. Cool, man!
I actually had two things about this bus ride back from the Springfield Gorge. First, it ties to what you just said. Otto is the only adult. There is no teacher on the bus leaving a field trip, which would never happen at any school that I've ever been to or know of. And then secondly, Lisa's on the bus with Bart, which means I never had this either. We had so many kids in each grade level that you never had a joint grade level field trip. So that means the 4th grade and the 2nd grade were on this field trip.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. All my field trips were grade exclusive as well. What about you, Aaron? Did you ever have any, like, whole school field trips?
Not that I can remember. I mean, you had, like, field days and stuff out at the track, but no, the actual field trips, no. And, I mean, none of my schools were super huge, but, I mean, you probably had, 100 to 200 kids in each grade, so
yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, and your point about them not having any teachers on there is pretty valid, too. That's kind of funny, because you'd think that they would have just one per bus or whatever, because the bus drivers don't give a fuck, dude. Like, I mean, they're not paid well enough to give a fuck about your kids. I mean, not that they don't want to get them there and back safely, but I imagine that's a really stressful job, just as much as driving in traffic sucks, and then to have 30 underage passengers, like, that you got to worry about. Yeah, they don't want to have to deal with behavioral issues.
So, they do that later on in the season, or in the series, too, where Otto's taking them to the Model N UN, and he's the only adult there. Of course, they crash the bus, and
no teacher there to
down
do
the
with
river.
them.
Yeah, that was the Lord of the Flies parody, I believe.
Right.
And then the other point I wanted to bring up after the bus thing is, once Lisa understands what her brother's going to do and that she can't talk him out of it, she should have offered to help him. And I'm being 100% serious about this. Lisa is a super smart nerd. She knows her science. And all this is about the angle at which you're jumping and the speed you have to get up to make that gap. And Lisa probably knows this already because she's really smart. So if she knows she can't talk him out of it, she could try to help him be safer by telling him what actually needs to occur for this to be possible.
So let's just say, for fun here, let's say Lisa could mathematically prove to Bart that there is no fucking way in hell he's going to make that jump. Do you think Bart listens, or do you think he still jumps?
I think it depends on the circumstances surrounding it. There's times where Lisa I mean, we saw it in 2 episodes ago where she gets him to get kind of zen before he goes out there to putt, so to speak. So Lisa has an effect on Bart. But, of course, that means we would not have an episode and we wouldn't have one of the most iconic scenes in The Simpsons if she was there to talk him out of it.
Yeah, it's true. And I think you're right that Lisa is capable, but I don't think she'd necessarily be willing in that regard, just because I think she'd be too emotionally distraught to actually to step up and do that. But I see your point abstractly that you're saying, like, once you know he's going to try to do it anyway, might as well do everything you can to help him make it. But I like the story we get with Homer and Bart instead, which is kind of touching and really, it has some really funny moments and some really heartfelt moments, which is basically the best of both worlds from The Simpsons.
I love what Homer says when he tries to get Bart to promise not to jump, where he says, "This isn't one of the phony baloney promises I expect you not to keep."
Yeah,
he already knows his son so well, so.
Right after telling Marge, who's encouraging him to go and try reasoning, that reasoning never works. He's a goner.
And he's saying that while he's, like, crying, basically.
Yeah. So after Homer has his heartfelt talk with Bart and tries to convince him not to jump over the gorge and gets Bart to give an actual seemingly heartfelt promise that he won't do it, Homer comes back in to talk to Marge. He's super proud. He's talking about how, they've actually got a pretty good kid up there. Marge tells him, that kid's got a pretty good dad, too. And at this moment, we see Bart just skate by the window on his way to the gorge.
Good old Bart.
So, Bart is preparing to jump. He's got his crowd there. He's got his dope Daredevil costume. He's got his skateboard. All that's left to do is to jump over the gorge. But as he's on his pursuit to take off the ramp, Homer comes barreling out of the car and snatches up Bart on the downhill and stops the jump attempt. He goes off on Bart and talks about how he tried everything. God help him, he even tried reasoning with Bart. The only thing left to do is to jump myself and to show you how much it sucks to have somebody you care about basically about to die.
Which is one of the better Homer and Bart moments in the series, especially up to this point. Like, you really feel like they both listen and understand what each one is saying in the scene.
Definitely.
I wanted to say, when Bart's doing his little warm-up spiel, where he's doing a bunch of little easy skateboarding tricks, I saw this out of the corner of my eye, and I had to rewind it. There is a kid, and you see a row of kids from behind only, and one of them looks exactly like Lisa. It has her exact hairline, and I thought, well, maybe it's just a similar one. So I rewound it again, and it's Lisa. It has to be Lisa, which she was just at home in the previous scene, so there's no reason for her to be out there. So I didn't know. It was like how we saw Sideshow Bob dancing with the crowd after he'd been arrested a few episodes ago, and it seemed like Lisa was actually there when she wasn't supposed to be at all.
They're probably just so used to drawing her, and they needed extra people to fill the crowd, so like, fuck it, we can add her in like 3 seconds. So I love the part where they're having this conversation and it's getting real like emotional and mushy, and I think they're even crying together to some extent. And then Homer says, "Bart, I've never felt so close to you," as the skateboard he is standing on starts to roll down the hill, and Homer accidentally attempts Bart's stunt to jump over Springfield Gorge on his skateboard, and we get a moment where it looks good, man. Like, he's going to make it, and things are great, and it's the most amazing, oh my god, I'm not going to make it, and he falls down and hits pretty much everything that one could on the way down. Trees, rocks, ledges, cliffs, all of it comes crashing to a halt at the bottom with the kids looking on in horror. He's rescued by an ambulance. They pull him up on a gurney. The ambulance immediately pulls away, hits a tree, and Homer takes the fall again. A fun fact about this one, so originally this animation sequence was actually drawn out where you actually see Homer fall and hit everything again. It was later changed so that you actually only saw the kids looking down, but you still heard the audio track. But in season 4, when we get to So It's Come to This, a Simpsons clip show, they actually play this scene in its entirety since they already animated it anyway. They just kept it and saved it for the clip show.
I think in the Simpsons movie, the last scene with Russ Cargill takes place where Maggie hits him with the rock to save the day. It takes place in Springfield Gorge, and I think you can still see the ambulance wrecked in the tree. So 20 years and they haven't cleared the ambulance off the scene.
You're absolutely right. That is still there, and yeah, that absolutely just wraps up Springfield. Just the laziness of the entire community, I guess. But
this is one of my favorite scenes, man. I love this scene.
Well, see, I like how the ambulance has about a whole 5-foot drive, and it just totally destroys it. I mean, like it's straight on head-on collision with this 5-foot drive that they took off.
That is my favorite part of the whole scene. It's especially when they pull Homer out after he falls the first time, and they keep bonking his head the whole time they're pulling him out of the gorge. Like he's all wrapped up and he keeps getting bonked against the wall. But oh my god, as soon as the ambulance takes off, it's so damn funny.
Man, yeah, I love the little Easter egg too in the movie. That's really just wraps this whole thing full circle. So Homer has joined Bart's former hero, Lance Murdoch, and it seems like he may have also broken every bone in his body. And we end the episode with Homer looking over, really, because he can't seem to lean, but he looks over at Lance and says, "You think that you've got guts? Try raising my kids." And scene. Aaron, is there anything else that you would like to say about Bart the Daredevil?
So there's a couple things that I found kind of humorous. The first of was when they drive out onto into the middle of the arena, and Truckosaurus just destroys their car. It immediately cuts to them, once they're down, to the insurance adjuster already there on the scene. And they've stopped everything. They're still in the middle of the Truckosaurus arena, and the adjuster's like, here's your check for that. And then, of course, you get the only thing they get from the Truckosaurus people are like, oh, here's a half bottle of domestic champagne. It's like, a half bottle of domestic champagne. All right, so...
when they're so excited about it, they yell out like, "Oh, we've got champagne to celebrate!"
Right? Yeah, they think it's great. They're like, "Oh, good." And then there's one other little scene where Lisa takes Bart. I think it's when he's decided to jump the gorge, and she takes him to go see Lance Murdoch in the hospital, and he's like, leave me with the kids for a minute, and they go out, and he's like, "I'm so glad to see someone taking an interest in danger." But first and before that, he wants to give him an autograph, and he just. Instead of just, he sticks the pen in his mouth, and instead of just writing his name, writes out this long, crazy autograph, which is nothing but scribbles all over his picture. And then he talks to her.
It probably looked very similar to if you let your daughter in a crayon sign a picture.
Very much. And my daughter has done that with Sharpie markers on old photos, by the way. And then, he right there at the end, he has them leave, and he's like, "Tell the nurse to go ahead and come in for my sponge bath. That's another fringe benefit."
Yeah, I really enjoyed that scene as well. Like, yeah, the message that he signs to Bart, I mean, it just kept going on and on and on and on. Richie, is there anything that you'd like to add, or anything from your book that we did not mention?
Well, I don't think I heard you mention this. There is a movie moment when Bart first arrives at the Springfield Gorge with all the effects around him. It's supposed to be an ode to Lawrence of Arabia. And besides that, at the Springfield General Hospital, there is a small sign that reads "Cash Only," which is ridiculous.
You would think that'd be a sign at Dr. Nick's, not Dr.
Yeah.
Rivers.
But all those surgeries and everything, cash only. Oh my goodness.
Awesome. Well, I think that's going to do it for this episode of the Best Darn Diddly Review Show. Before we get out of here, Aaron, is there anything that you'd like to plug? Where can we find you on the internet, my friend?
I have a Facebook, and that's about it. So,
cool.
Aaron Edwards. Look me up.
Go and check him out and talk to him about The Simpsons and being a father and all that good stuff.
I do have a bunch of... matter of fact, I don't think I've updated my About Me in years, but I looked at it the other day, and it is still full of Simpsons quotes.
Well, there you go. It was meant to be.
Oh my gosh, yeah, I think I have an old Simpsons quote on there too. I completely forgot about that. Wow.
When I got married, I got rid of Facebook. I just felt that was a recipe for trouble with me. All I had on there was girls I was trying to bone in college, so, it was...
That was back when Facebook was fun.
Probably, yeah. Richie, what about you, man? Anything you want to plug this week?
Well, as always, you can follow me on Twitter. I'm at @thewiz_kid23. I do want to say, Aaron, thank you very much. You brought up a lot of really excellent points today, and I definitely hope in the future you'd be willing to come back and chat with us again, because it was fun, man.
Yeah, absolutely. I had a blast.
Awesome. Yes, very big thank you to Aaron. We had a lot of fun talking with you today, man. Hope you had as much fun as we did, and we definitely hope you'll come back on in the future. Also, while we're talking about thank yous, big thank you to Steve the Fan at thefanspodcast.com for putting this show on his network. We really appreciate that. And for myself, go ahead and follow me on Twitter and pretty much everywhere else at MrMostDaysOff. Also, wrestling fans, come and check me out at voicesofwrestling.com, where I do a weekly Lucha Underground review with my friend Chris Novembrino called Lucha of the Hidden Temple. Other than that, we look forward to seeing you next week when we review Itchy and Scratchy and Marge, and Bart gets hit by a car on the Best Darn Diddly Review Show.